So, welcome back to the episode where I talk about when I turned 21. Now, for a lot of people who've been around for a long time, 7 years ago, I made this video. But today, I'm going to do it right, the way I wanted to do it back then. Because today, I'm going to go a lot more into the details of the anime, of the video games, of all of that. This is a story about inspirations, about dreams, about anything is possible, and imagination. It's one of those things. It's kind of what really made me, unfortunately, become who I am today. And I'll ask you guys, what was it like for you? A lot of you have not turned 21 yet, I'm sure. What was it like when you turned 21? You know, for me, I was 20. I was about to turn 21. I didn't really think too much about it. But my parents, being British, really put a big emphasis about turning 21, how it was a very big deal. You know, you get cards in England and there'd be a key on it. And the key was basically to say, this is the key to the kingdom. This is your life now. You're in control. You're at that age where you have to kind of start really looking at your life and taking control of it. And up to that point, I was not that guy. I was just a guy going through high school, playing video games, going out drinking with my friends on the weekends. And then, you know, as soon as I got out of high school, I just started to do a lot of partying and a lot of drinking and all of that. And I grew up loving anime and video games and all of that, as I talked about, you know, ease and that. But when I turned 19 to 20, it became about drinking and clubs and the social aspects. And I heavily got into it with my friends. And I want to say that I'm still friends with some of the people from back then that I used to go partying with. And really good people, especially nowadays. Now it's so funny, we all have daughters now. It's so funny. But back then, we were a rowdy bunch of drinking dudes. Going to clubs, fighting all the time. I talked about this. I used to fight all the time. And I was pretty good at it. Isn't that so crazy? I was pretty good at it. And I enjoyed it. I liked getting into confrontations. I liked doing all that sort of stuff. This is the folly of our youths and all of that. So I started just doing all of that, drinking a lot, and just getting carried away. And before I knew it, I started to get a little bit lost. All of the things that I had grown up with, like video games and anime and stuff, it kind of took a bit of a back burner, a real back burner. And it was all about the drinking. And I remember coming home to my parents, and I just turned 21. And I said to them, I really need to change what I'm doing. I knew that I didn't want to be doing what I was doing. I knew it was a kind of a dead-end place to go. And I was just way too absorbed in it. And I was like, this is not who I am. I kind of need to leave the environment. That's what it was back then. I needed to leave. And so my parents presented me with something that was very fascinating. They said, why don't you go over to England and stay with your grandmother, your Nana? And I was like, wow, that would be something interesting, because we moved over to Canada when I was 7 from England, you know, from Yorkshire. And I just grew up in Canada. And there was a unique opportunity to go back to my homeland and to kind of find myself there and find what England was all about, what I had left, what didn't I know about it. So I said yes, but I was also a little bit nervous. I'd never really gone anywhere on my own, taken a flight on my own or anything like that. And I remember getting on that flight. My parents must have been so happy, going, bye-bye, and all of that. And getting on that flight and flying to England and landing. And then a friend of my parents picked me up and drove me through, the Yorkshire moors. And I didn't know what planet I was on. I mean, the time change and everything, I felt like, where the heck am I? I was really disoriented to that first night. And then I show up at she was a wonderful lady. She's long passed away now, unfortunately. For over 20 plus years she's been passed away. But my nana was there at her flat in England welcoming me. And she's like, oh, do you want me to make you some chips? She's so British. And I was like, it was really nice to see her. She was such a sweetheart. She was such a lovely woman. And I ended up like staying there for quite a few months, and it was a very fascinating experience for somebody who was at that time drinking rough and tumble, you know, going out with some rowdy friends for rowdy nights out. At least 4 or 5 times a week I was doing that back then. So all of a sudden being very grounded, I'm in this small little flat, brick flat with my Nana in England, and this is before the internet. Can you imagine? There was nothing to do. So I kind of settled down. You know, it's not like, hey, I'm going to go. Hey, no, there's nowhere really to go right now. It's just okay. And so I ended up watching a lot of soap operas, British soap operas, Coronation Street, EastEnders, every single one back in there. You know, we're talking 1994, 95. Watching all of those, and I started to really enjoy that. But anyways, I started to go uptown and I started to explore my hometown of Yorkshire, and it was amazing. I went back to places that I hadn't been to since I was 7 years old. I walked back to my old street, and I remembered I had a friend up the road, and I walked up the road, knocked on the door, and him and his mum were there, and they remembered me, and I sat down and had tea with them. And it had been, oh my God, at that point, like 14, 15 years, you know, it was crazy. And so we just kind of caught up and stuff like that. And I kind of got to experience Yorkshire and my upbringing and Britain in general. And, you know, I've always felt very out of place being in Canada, because in Canada, I had a British accent when I first moved here, so nobody thought I was Canadian. And I go back to England, and everybody thinks I'm American. They think I'm, you know, like, and I'm like, no, I'm a British citizen. I belong here. And they're like, nope, I don't think so, Yank. That's what they would call me back then. It was really funny with my accent, because I had a Canadian accent at that point. So I've always felt a little out of place being between Canada and England. But I started to go up to the local malls and shopping centers, and I started to buy things. And I started to buy anime magazines. I was like, oh my God, look at this. I bought this Anime UK magazine, and I remember it had Macross on the cover. And I was a big Macross fan. And I was like, oh, there's a Macross Plus? What is this? It had just come out. And then I found out there's Macross 7. And so I started reading all of these magazines. And that's how you got your information. I started reading a lot of magazines off the shelf, bringing them home, studying them, and all of that. And I started to get really excited about anime. Started to get really excited about it. Like, I was already excited as a kid, but I gone through my years. All of a sudden, I was like, I really want to get into anime again. I really, like, there's an entire other brand new anime, Macross Plus. Like, what is this? And then I was so bored there, I started to lay on the floor and do something that I hadn't done for many years, draw. I was a big artist growing up, and I kind of like had stopped doing it, where I had so much time on my hands, like you had so many hours. I started to draw my comic books, and I just started to draw and draw and draw and draw. My imagination, you know, I think you know, a lot of people say that the internet is good, and I'm the first to say that, but also the internet is good when you remove it, when you don't have it, because you have to use something absolutely crazy, your own imagination. You have to rely on that. Oh no! And I've got to say, it was one of the most imaginative times in my life, where there I am in England, sitting on my grandmother's floor, nothing else to do but draw and dream about anime. That's all I was doing, and I was just so fascinated. I didn't even have any video games, because there's the PAL system over there, so any of my machines I brought over wouldn't work on the TVs and things like that, so it was very frustrating. And then I found other artists over there through pen pals and stuff like that. I was all over the place. And I started connecting with them. I went out and met them, and so it started becoming really, really interesting. And then before I knew it, time had come to come back to Canada. And this is why I want to tell this story. It really is. I come back to Canada. I know, I've already told this, that but with my game room, I came back, my dad picked me up, brought me home. They had stripped my entire room. I had posters and video game stuff, all of my rooms. They had ripped it all down when I was away and painted it just white, like clinical, like a hospital. And I was like, what has happened? And so that was a really weird place to start. Okay, so it didn't start that great at that point. I was like, and I remember my dad at the time, he was so happy I was home though. He's like, John, I'm so happy you're at home, because he had my mom, my sister, my sisters, brought a girlfriend of hers home to live with us to rent another room. And so my dad was in a house just with women, and he's like, John, I've been going insane. He's like, I'm glad you're back to balance things out. I'm like, yeah. And so here is the bit I really wanted to get to. I'm all enthusiastic. I want to do art, like full on. I want to really just dedicate every day to drawing and being creative. And the thing is, I came home and I didn't go back to my friends drinking. They all were like, hey, come out, hang out and drink. I'm like, no. I said, you want to come out and hang out? Absolutely, but I got to get up early in the morning to draw. They're like, what? I'm like, who is this guy? And all of that. And so I started drawing all the time when I got back home, and I really developed my skill like that. And it was just fun. I just enjoyed it. I didn't know what I wanted to do with it, but I knew I wanted to do something. And then I was like, anime. Where do I get it? What can I do? And I remember back to my friend, who I wasn't friends with then. He had just opened a club. I didn't know him. I wanted to know him, but I didn't. And that was William Chow, also known as the King of Smut 95, the godfather of anime in North America at that time. He had opened up a store. And so the great thing is I had my license and all that. And I just remember my dad saying, hey, I'll drive you over there. This is before Google Maps. So you had to look a map and look out, which way to go. So my dad drove me because it was kind of complicated at that time how to get over there. I'd never done that big drive. So I went to William's store and I walked in. And there was something different when I walked in to see William this time. When I'd known William, I was like 14 years old. I was a kid. I was still trying to find myself. We're 21. I kind of had found myself a little bit, and I kind of had that key. You know what I'm saying? I was kind of driving, my life at this point. And I walked in and I said, hey, Will, how you doing? He said, oh, good. And I said, man, I'm so into drawing my own comics and all that. And he's like, oh, wow. And he's like, looking at stuff, and he's like, hey, why don't you sell your comics in here? Isn't that nice? We sold some of my comics in the store, and we sold a few of them for sure, even for back then. And then I didn't realize what he did. You brought him in tapes, and he would tape the latest anime films from Japan or TV shows, and his team subtitled them for fun, just for the lark of it. That's what they did. And so I couldn't believe this incredible service. So I went in and I'm like, oh, okay, here's a couple of tapes. And I went back 2 weeks later and I picked up the tapes, and there was Street Fighter 2, the animated movie. And I picked up, here's my old copy. I'm getting the 4K Blu-ray when that eventually comes out. And I picked this up, brought it home. And if there was ever a movie for me, it was this movie. I couldn't believe that they had taken the game that I adored, Street Fighter 2, and turned it into this anime feature film that did it justice. If you have never seen Street Fighter 2, the animated film, check it out if you like Street Fighter. It's unbelievable. And so I was going back. I started getting addicted. Every week, I started going back to the store. Hey, do you have Macross Plus? He's like, yeah, I got the first 2 parts. I'm like, what? So he gave them to me on tape. I bought them. And then eventually, back even then, I bought the laser discs. I bought myself a laser disc player, and I started to really enjoy anime. Like, the obsession began, and I started going in there, and he's like, hey, I know you like Neo Geo. I got the Fatal Fury movies. These are the newer versions released by Discotek. But he's like, I got the Fatal Fury movies. This was right when they came out. And so I was seeing like Art of Fighting, the OVA, which is not very good, the Fatal Fury movies. So much anime I was consuming. This is me at 21, just taking it all in, man. Taking it all in. I wasn't going to the bar anymore. I was staying at home watching my anime. And it was glorious. It was glorious. And then I watched one anime that I'm telling you changed the course of my life. It really did. And I didn't know it at the time, and I've got the newer version of it. I obviously backed the Kickstarter to get this. That anime is Otaku no Video. This anime changed my life. I was already very enthusiastic, doing my comics, just watching anime, taking it all in. But this was a recreation of fans that started Gainax. And the journey that they kind of went on. It's a fictitious journey in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways it's very real. And I could relate to it. I could relate to the normal guy meeting an old friend of his, and then his old friend is just like hardcore into anime, getting him into it. And then like not just becoming a fan, but becoming an otaku. You don't hear that terminology anymore. But becoming an otaku is an obsessive fan. And it's really catered towards anime and just fandom in general in Japan. If you were really into cars, you were an otaku for cars. So this became my Bible. And I lived for this anime, and I related to it so much. I can't tell you, it's such a heartwarming anime to me. It made me feel like I wasn't crazy for liking anime. You know, because that is still a time when anime wasn't big. Sailor Moon was just beginning, Dragon Ball Z was just beginning, Gundam Wing was just beginning. This was that time period. I can't stress that enough. So I can't thank William enough for his store and for that hangout. I would go in there and I'd talk to other anime fans, and I'd meet so many other people. And he also had something else. He would rent video games. This is like 1994, 95. But he wouldn't just rent video games. He rented PC Engine games. Nobody did that. And I remember looking under the counter like at Gold, and I said, Will, can I rent these? And the prices were so cheap. He's like, oh yeah, just get $10 for 2 weeks for all the games. And I remember, here we go, renting Flash Hiders, which was a gigantic fighting game back then. It was a really, really big deal fighting game. Fighting games were really in their zone. The Neo Geo was in full effect at that point. And Flash Hiders captured my imagination because I'm like, oh my god, there's so many modes in this game. There really was so many modes, and I really like the character designs and all of that stuff. So really love Flash Hiders. And then the next game that I rented, which I was, during this time, Macross Plus and Macross 7, I was losing my mind about. And then I rented this on the PC Engine. Macross, the strategy game. Look at that artwork by Mikimoto there, still doing the amazing flight suit, still upgraded from the movie. I was in love. So this is a strategy game. We use Valkyries on a map and take down the battle pods. The Zentradi, and I loved it. And you know something else? I ripped all of this music because you could put it in a CD player, and once you get past the HE system or CD-ROM and disc bit, it would play the music, so I could record it onto tape, which I did do. And so I played the living crap out of the strategy game. Got nearly to the end. I can't believe it back then how I did it. And then another glorious moment. This summer, this is all in the same summer, by the way. I rented Ys 4, The Dawn of Ys, PC Engine, the Japanese version. There was no translated version at this time. And I played all the way to the end of the game. I got stuck in one section, which I mentioned in other videos. But the music there, everything was on the up and up. Everything was phenomenal. Anime was the best of the best. I was consuming it. I could not get enough. Video games, I could not get enough. I remember being on the highway, leaving Will's store, and he'd, renting games with a stack full of new anime to watch, driving down the highway, blasting Geese Howard's theme from Fatal Fury Special at full blast in the car, and being so thrilled at life in general. You know what I mean? I didn't need any drugs or drinking or anything. I smoked cigarettes back then, yeah, but you know what? The void in my life that was there before was being filled by all of this great stuff that I was bringing in, and it was enhancing me. Some people might say, oh, watching anime and playing video games, that doesn't do anything for a person. I beg to differ. I think it does make a major difference. I think it can be inspiring and make you who you are. It's what made me who I am. It really is, unfortunately, as I say, but it was absolutely fantastic. And I'll never forget that summer of first turning 21 in January. And then getting into July, August, September, the Renaissance coming back from England and all that. And I met a new girl at that point, and things were really, really going well and all of that. But I'll save that story for another time, because we're going to get into probably in the future where things weren't so good. This was the Renaissance parts of my earlier youth, and then it kind of gets back to the more darker times for sure. And I'll talk about this in probably an upcoming episode. I'm probably going to title the day that my life changed. I know I'm linking this video as the first part to that, and then there's the second part and all of that. I find it really important to do these things. I really want to cement them, because the amount of time I think back to when I turned 21 and I was like, oh man, the good old days. And I don't live in the past. My present is better than any time ever with my wife and my child. I couldn't be happier. But you know what? It's okay to think back to the past and to really enjoy some of those turning points in our lives. And our lives are not that very long. I'm turning 50 this year. I was 21 once. What happened? and all that. And I want it to be a bit of I don't know, an explanation to people that being into anime and video games is not a bad thing. It can be a very inspiring thing. And don't feel bad about doing it. If anybody's making you feel bad about it, don't let them. Don't let them. Enjoy who you are and what you like to do. Don't have anybody else dictate that to you. Do what you want to do. You've only got one life. And as I said, it goes by very, very quick. I'm noticing that now, turning 50. I'm like, where did it all go? You know, but the one thing I can say, I enjoyed doing those things. I enjoyed my life, and I made it what it is. I made my life back then what it was. You know, I could have kept on drinking, but I didn't want to. So I got myself involved in a hobby that took me away from that and gave me a lot of inspiration. And I still feel as excited about life as I did at 21. There's no difference. There's absolutely no difference. To be honest with you, there are moments that I am more excited about life. And you see a new video. I'm just talking about the video game anime aspects. I'm more excited now than I even was back then. There's stuff even coming out now that I'm like, whoa, man. But you can't beat the good old days of watching Macross Plus on Laserdisc, and the Fatal Fury movies, and Otaku no Video, and Street Fighter 2, and renting PC Engine games at your local anime store in the summer of 1995. It doesn't get much better than that. That is for sure. So anyways, guys, until next time.